During the summer of 2014, the Israeli army launched Operation Protective Edge, with the stated aim of stopping Palestinian fighters in the Gaza Strip firing rockets into Israel, and to find and destroy a network of underground tunnels also used by Hamas. But there is one day that will be remembered above all others, the darkest, the 1st of August, Black Friday.
It was the deadliest attack by the Israeli military during the 50-day conflict in 2014. The Israeli military unleashed massive firepower, massive bombardment of the southern city of Rafah, resulting in the highest number of civilian casualties on any day during the conflict.
بتشوف الصواريخ بنزين علينا.
كان زي يوم الحشر، زي يوم القيامة الناس بتجوا. اللي بنسقبنا وراه بنسيبه وضله جاري.
What the Israeli military did and why they did it has formed the basis of a groundbreaking investigative collaboration between Amnesty International and forensic architecture at Goldsmiths, University of London. It provides in unprecedented levels of detail what happened that day, in depth and breadth that's unmatched by anything produced before. And it reveals evidence of war crimes and possible crimes against humanity. It's the story of a manhunt, a controversial military order, and the price that was paid by Palestinian civilians for the life of a single soldier.
We're using hundreds of images and videos. We're using satellite imagery, the accounts of mainstream media. We're using testimonies collected by Amnesty International. We're using accounts of Israeli soldiers. And what is necessary to do is to build a 3D model and locate each one of those various media in space and time. The aim is to reconstruct hour by hour, minute by minute, every event that happened during August 1st, 2014.
Our investigation began with an announcement.
Israel and the Palestinian factions have agreed that they are now prepared to implement a 72-hour unconditional humanitarian ceasefire.
This humanitarian ceasefire will commence at 8 a.m. local time on Friday, August 1st, 2014. It will last for a period of 72 hours.
The following morning, Palestinian civilians were preparing or on the route back to their homes, that they'd fled because of the fighting.
The Israeli army was interpreting the ceasefire as a license to go looking for tunnels.
At the same time, in the morning of the 1st of August, a firefight broke out between Israeli military and Hamas fighters, during which an Israeli soldier was captured.
The Secretary General notes that the UN has no independent means to verify exactly what happened. According to the latest reports, 2 IDF soldiers were killed and 1 taken captive after the humanitarian ceasefire came into effect. This would constitute.
He was a 23-year-old reconnaissance officer in the Givati Brigade and engaged to be married. His name was Hadar Goldin. And his colleagues believed the young lieutenant had been dragged down into a tunnel. So a highly controversial and secret military order was instigated, the Hannibal Directive.
The way in which most Israeli soldiers would understand that command is better a dead soldier than a prisoner.
The underlying concern is that a captured military soldier will be used as a bargaining tool in negotiations to release hundreds of prisoners in Israeli jails.
They launched an artillery and air assault to seal off the area in a desperate attempt to find and rescue Goldin if they could. If they couldn't, the Hannibal Directive ordered they do anything to try to foil the capture, even if that meant putting the soldier's life at risk.
At the time of the attack, the Israeli military didn't know whether the captured soldier was still alive, was being spirited away to another part of the Gaza Strip or to another part of the city of Rafah, or was dead.
They attacked what they called suspicious people and buildings. They had other targets in their sights too.
Anything in this area, all cars leaving that, whether civilian or military, will be targeted. They are not going to let an Israeli soldier be captured alive.
Ambulances were prevented from getting to hospitals because it may well have been that that captured soldier was in one of those ambulances.
While the Israelis searched for any trace of Goldin above ground, others were sent into the tunnels to look for him. Their radio communications make plain their anxiety. There was no sign of Goldin, but it's claimed his colleagues found some of his blood-stained belongings.
What followed was one of the fiercest attacks by the Israeli army on Palestinians. Well, over 1,000 tank shells were fired the heavily populated area of Rafah within the first few hours after the army learned of the capture. This was accompanied by aerial bombardment, also bombing by drones, and also an incursion inside.
At the peak of that attack, a European image satellite passes over Rafah and takes one shot of the city. That is somehow the key for us to interpret the event of that day.
It has helped underpin one of Amnesty's main allegations that war crimes were committed, the disproportionate bombing of civilian areas after the Hannibal Directive had been initiated. It allowed the team to pinpoint a number of craters caused by the bombardment that morning. Cross-referenced with other material, they were then able to identify the areas where the bombing was heaviest, the areas where the military believed Goldin might have been held if still alive. It was a technique called geosyncing.
Geosyncing is a process of analysis, quite manual analysis, where we look really closely at an image or a video and we analyze where it is taken from and also try to time that piece of footage. In this way, we are able to then connect different pieces of footage together and build a timeline.
One of the parts of Rafah that endured the heaviest bombing was the neighbourhood of Al-Tanur. And when the Israelis unleashed their massive assault, it was teeming with people, taking advantage of what they believed was a ceasefire. To help establish the time it took place, forensic architecture matched different shots of smoke plumes, checked and corrected the camera metadata from the pictures, and employed shadow analysis.
Imagine it, we build the entire city so that we can get the shadows right and match every shadow that we see in a photograph with a digital shadow that we can simulate in the computer. So that 3D model of Rafah as a sundial allow us to time every photograph in which we see a shadow mark on.
Now knowing the location of the bombing and having confirmed the time it took place, forensic architecture then started examining the type and size of weapons dropped.
We have acquired a video that is quite a rare instance where you see the bomb in mid-air when it's dropping. We are able to analyze from the shape of the bomb, the type of bomb that was used.
When the Israeli military dropped one-ton bombs, civilians were killed in their dozens in attacks that, at the very least, were indiscriminate or disproportionate.
The blast area of that one-ton bomb would be several hundred meters around as well, and would cause civilian injury, deaths to any non-combatants in the close proximity.
The Al-Namleh family, who were among the hundreds returning to Al-Tanur that morning, were caught up in the attack.
بتشوف الصواريخ بنزين علينا. فالمهم أنا صحيت لقيت رجلي مبتورة وابني شريف طبعا طلعت لقيت رجله مقطوعة وشفت عبير بنتي برضو قامت تجري على الشظايا وقعت تاني. استشهد يوسف والنغم هي أختي. وبطلع قدامي كانت قدامي ولاء مقطع 4 شقف قدامي يا مرمي بعيد عني يمكن 5 متر 4 شقف وعلى شمالها كانت اليسرى من النص مقطوعة رجليها 2 مقطعات.
After intensive bombing, ground troops and tanks joined the manhunt for Goldin. To discover how they were deployed, forensic architecture used a surprisingly different form of remote sensing, one that can detect signs of movement not visible to the naked eye. NDVI.
NDVI stands for Normalized Difference Vegetation Index, and this is a common tool used in remote sensing to find where healthy trees or crops are located. So this satellite captures tanks in movement. It captures destroyed trees and croplands that have been bulldozed or run over by tanks.
We can see the trajectories of movement because they've left marks on the fields that surround homes in the semi-agrarian area.
We can measure a great amount of vegetative change in a very short period of time, so we have great certainty that this change resulted from the conflict. And that helps us understand some of the underlying strategy in the tank movement.
We see them moving in a column towards an area. They were trying to trace the path of the tunnel overground and arrive at the tunnel mouth.
An Israeli soldier speaking anonymously to the NGO Breaking the Silence described their strategy.
A crazy amount of artillery was fired. Armored D9 bulldozers plowed the entire area. After them came the tanks in 2 lines, continuously shooting at the houses as they moved along. The infantry walked along the trail opened by the tanks.
Now, I've just come back from Gaza, and we retraced the routes of the advance of many of the tank units. I don't know exactly what resistance they were facing, but it does seem to me that nearly every building that came into view of the tank's longer approach route received a tank shell.
Despite, or perhaps because of, the exhaustive manhunt and the heavy shelling of Rafah and the tunnel entrances, the body of Hadar Goldin was never found. Just before 11:30 the following night, he was officially declared dead. No physical remains were laid in his coffin. The Hannibal Directive's massive bombardment and the carnage it wrought on the local population should have ended the moment Goldin was declared lost in battle. Instead, the Israeli military continued to relentlessly pound Rafah for a further 2 days.
From July 30th to August 1st, 1139, we have found 49 large craters that are the result of airstrikes. And from August 1st, 1139 to August 4th, another 48 craters. In total, those craters are the result of 97 airstrikes. We have also found close to 570 artillery craters for the duration of this time. And those are individual marks on the map.
He really wanted that population to feel that, I guess, anger in a way for the capture of a soldier.
Israel denies violating international law on the 1st of August. But in the military's pursuit of the captured soldier, 135 Palestinian civilians, 75 of them children, had been killed.
There's an overwhelming case for investigations to be undertaken to find out who were the perpetrators of these war crimes, to bring them to justice.